All right. Let me go get the link. All right. Work. All right, so back up and spread the word a little bit. So while some of you are joining in again, last question was about cause and effects of the Reformation. Cause was the, I guess, arrogance and corruption in the Catholic Church, most notably the indulgences, the bribes and extortion that the church was doing for sins, and kind of these pay your way into heaven. And so Martin Luther was the first to really stand up and challenge the church. He did that with his 95 Theses, and so a lot of people started to follow suit, leave the Catholic Church, decided they had better alternatives, and the effects certainly were a very complicated and ugly kind of power struggle between the two religions or branches of Christianity, with Catholicism and all of these new ones, Protestant break-off denominations fighting for control. You had England was a big country to soon leave the Catholic Church, and so it brought a lot of animosity between, especially Britain and France at this time. So that was some of the big effects. Lexi, what happened? I thought I could pause it, and instead I turned it completely off. So that's what happened. Let's see here. Can I please go over mercantilism and any other economic systems that we need to know? Yes, Jesse. Mercantilism is when a colonizing country, most notably Spain, Britain, Portugal, France, the Netherlands were the big ones, basically set the trading rules for the countries that they now oversee, or their colonies. And so they is a big thing that hopefully some of you remember from U.S. history back in 8th grade. Was that was a big thing the United States was getting mad about, was the fact that they couldn't go and trade with whoever they wanted, the colonists. They had to specifically go through, and their trade was dictated to them by the British, what prices were set, how much taxes had to be paid, and tariffs, whatnot. And so that's mercantilism. There's no free trade, there's no capitalistic ideals. It's all, you're going to make money for us. You're going to, all the profit goes to the mother country. And so that's mercantilism. Must we know any information about North America? No, not really. Explorers were going there during this time. Fred, like DeSoto, and I mean, this is the beginning of. I mean, certainly the American colonies. You do need to know that those are set up and started during this time period. You know, Jamestown, 1608, but a lot of North America, most notably, you know, the United States, Mexico, they really come into the picture more in Unit 5 with the revolutions that happen there, more so than now. But they are starting to be colonized. Obviously, the Aztecs are in North America, so you know them, but I think you're probably referring to more the United States. Was the Portuguese military important? Lexi, their navy, I guess a little bit, just because they were able to travel so well. You know, Prince Henry, the navigator, setting up those schools, but Portugal is not a military power by any means, and it's why, with the exception of Brazil and a couple places in Africa, Portugal really gets pushed out of the way by Spain in the Americas, and then by Europe, or by Britain and France in Asia and Africa. What's so important about the Europeans bringing clocks to Japan? I don't know, Jesse. That's something I don't remember why that's important. So I guess it's not. Yeah, sorry, that's a crappy answer, but I don't have anything better. So let's see what other questions there are. I know there's some here on my mind, so give me a sec. Did the Ottomans have religious tolerance? Did they convert everyone to Islam? From Amy. No, they did not. They did not convert everyone, I should say. They did certainly allow Christians to be there. They actually took a lot of them into forms, some of their military with. So there was religious toleration. They had to have it, really. And so, I mean, is it a big part of the Ottoman history? Kind of. But no, none of the three gunpowder empires forced conversions or anything like that. Let's see. Could I go over the themes and key concepts for this unit? Sure, if I pull them up. I mean, certainly the themes are all kind of the same. I mean, I'm reading the theme stuff basically from the webpage here. The Unit 4 up near the top. You know, Theme 1, Columbian Exchange, disease, certainly the big thing is smallpox is going to wipe out a lot of North America. You're going to have deforestation to make way for all of the farming and plantations that you see in the New World, along with the mining, the silver trade, certainly going to have some environmental effects in that part of the world. You are going to see some major demographic shifts, though, because during this time period, the world population is actually going to double. And a lot of that's due to all these new foods that are coming from the New World to the Old. Culturally, the big thing is Protestant Reformation and the impacts that it's going to have on the Christian religion. The scientific revolution and kind of the remnants of the Renaissance are going to have big cultural effects. The church is certainly going to lose a lot of its power and notoriety as people are going to look to for other things, I guess, to explain the unexplainable. And this is where reason and rationality start to come in, rather than just believing, relying solely on faith. Politically, it's all about the land empires in Asia and the maritime ones in Europe, and how they impact, especially the maritime ones, how they impact the Americas and how they impact and interact with Africa and Asia. Economically, the slave trade's the big one. The rise of mercantilism and colonial trade really makes it. This is the first time we have global trade. And socially, the big stuff is going to be about the rise of slavery and how slavery is going to change from what we've seen it throughout history, where it was, for the most part, conquered peoples in an empire or a nation state, and now it's going to become an actual economic kind of commodity, where it's, you know, slaves are bought and sold and taken from other parts of the world to do the work. So that's very different than certainly what we saw. Patriarchy still stays the same. Merchants and traders are going to rise in stature. So a lot of the themes we've seen the last 2-3 units are pretty much going to continue, as far as those last two, with the rise of merchant class and women still being subjugated. Questions here. Who were Spain's rivals? From Lexi. Portugal early on, the Treaty of Tordesillas splits up who has what land, and so that kind of helps. Later on, Spain's going to have a big clash with England, the whole Spanish Armada, where Spain is unsuccessful, and then they're going to be kind of pushed to the side as Britain and France really are going to take over a lot of the global trade. Is there any in-depth knowledge we need to have about Moscow? From Audrey. That Moscow comes to prominence. This really happens back even when the Mongols were ruling them. And so they are going to soon become kind of the center for Russia as they move forward. It's going to move from Kiev to Moscow. And soon that's going to become the capital. And like most places, London, Paris, kind of those capital cities are important for empires going forward. What are Jesuits? From Jesse. It's a denomination within the Catholic religion. As I said, they're well known in this part of time because of the missionary work they were doing in Asia, and the, I guess, negative feedback that they were getting from the Chinese and Japanese especially. Fred, I completely agree with you that it stopped being funny a long time ago. Did the Ottoman Empire have any major conflicts with neighboring countries that we need to know about? I mentioned the Battle of Lepanto. I think it's 1571. It's when really is what stops Ottoman expansion into Eastern Europe. So certainly there's going to be a lot of conflicts between the Ottomans and the Russians are going to be fighting over that territory along the Black and Caspian Seas. That's going to be a big, big thing going from Unit 4 and into Unit 5 as well. And there's some battles with the Safavids, not tons. But they'll eventually kind of take over some of that land as well. That was from Aaron. What were the Dutch like religiously? Mostly were Protestant. So that answers hopefully your question there, Lexi. Sorry, I know you guys are, I've got questions coming in from all spots. Can I talk about how Europe tried to force their way into Asian trade? From Annie, yes. That was one of their big, I guess, ideas. Was they wanted to continue to get these goods, which we learned about last unit with the Silk Road. They wanted to continue to be a part of that, but we're tired of paying all the middlemen along the route, specifically the Ottomans that didn't want to deal with that. And some of that goes back to some of the hostilities caused with the Crusades. There's still a lot of tension between Christians and Muslims at that time, still back. And so with this travel, they were able to find kind of new ways to circumvent that. And so the big thing was these European traders were going to all these places and seeing all the raw materials, silk, porcelain, spices, gold, silver, and certainly wanted to get a part of that because they can turn those into raw materials. It's worth a lot of money. And if they can get that straight from the source, then that's more money for them. And so that was what a lot of these European countries were looking to do. the big way to do it is to go in and you make friends with some of these people in these port cities or areas, um, and basically tell them that we can. You get a lot of the European countries, kind of gave them two options. We can work together and have this be a strong, good union, or we can take what we want, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And so both those things happen to kind of varying degrees, and so you saw that as time went on, that some put up resistance, usually um, to no avail, while you had others work hand in hand, like you saw in Africa with the slave trade, that work with the Europeans to try to certainly put some money in their pockets as well. Back to remind, Will, any key differences and similarities between Peter and Catherine the Great? No, I mean, same family, similar ideas, certainly similarities. They both really pushed Westernization and wanted to try to catch Russia up as best they could to the rest of Western Europe. You're going to see Russia expand a lot more under Catherine than you do Peter, as far as big differences. Policy-wise, a lot of the stuff's similar, so there's not. I don't think there's a lot as far as the differentiation between the two. Now it's from Will. Let's see, from Gray. Are there any small details about the maritime empires in general that are important? No. I mean, certainly remember the Treaty of Tordesillas and its impact on Spain and Portugal. Important to note who comes first. Portugal and Spain are first, and then you have the three latter ones, the Britain, France, and the Dutch. Those three rely on the charter company idea, and will become much more successful moving forward in the colonialism and imperialism that we see in Unit 5 and what we have at this time. But small little things, no, I don't think so. During this time period, what countries are controlling the Silk Road? From Aaron, for the most part, the Silk Road is kind of going by the wayside. You still see China play a big role in trade a little bit with the Middle East, but with the Europeans sailing to all these different places, and China too. I mean, you had Zheng He make his travels across the Indian Ocean. Travel by sea is going to become much more important, and than the land routes that we saw with the Silk Road. So they kind of are going away. Do I need to know about the British economy from Lexi? Mercantilism. That's what you need to know. And that they're probably will become the best at getting raw materials and turning them into manufactured goods. And that's a big reason what we'll see next year with industrialization. Britain's got a lot of things going for them, but a lot of the fact that they have so many raw materials coming in is going to help them as well. But no, there's nothing specific you need to know about their economy or any empires or anything. That a lot of the things are, again, big ideas, similarities, patterns. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for with a lot of these things, not necessarily every little detail about all these different areas that we're learning about. So the Russians expanded east but wanted to westernize. That is correct, and confusing, I know. But for the most part, Russia is going to expand east all the way through Siberia to the Pacific. But they want to be like Western Europe, and so that's why we use the term westernize or westernization. But there obviously isn't any land for them really to expand to the west. They will take some of those land in what we call the Baltics, which is now Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia, Ukraine, some of those areas, but there's just not a whole lot of land that they can take because most of it's already taken by strong European countries. Did Asia interact with the Americas at all? No. not until Unit 5. What is France's social structure like? Same as most of Europe. You've got a king. You have the nobles still, who are the landowners and have a lot of the wealth. The church and clergy is going to have a lot of power. And a majority of the public is going to be your middle class or peasants, and they're not going to have a whole lot of rights or say in anything. And eventually that's going to become a big problem and lead to revolution, but not yet. That's Unit 5. Do I remember the amount? I'm going to pull it up so I can see what the rest of this question is. Remember the amount of questions that will be on the test. It's going to be the same as every other test you take in my class. It will be 35 questions. So will the cumulative that you are taking next week. It will be 35 questions. And the cumulative will cover everything from Chapter 11 through Unit 4, which is 23. So that's the introductions that we had to the Incas and Aztecs, the Mongols, and Tang and Song China for Unit 3. And then all of Unit 4. That will be the cumulative exam that you guys will have next week. And just so you know, all scores, Mr. King's got, as you saw with the quiz, Mr. King has the same grading scales or curve or whatever you want to call it that I had before. So all of that thing will be the same for both those two assignments. And I'm getting with Mr. King or Holberg, whoever it is that's putting in your grades. We'll make sure that he knows that the cumulative also can replace papers as well as tests. But I don't think you had many papers this second quarter, so I'm not able to look at that stuff anymore. So hopefully that should all still be straightened out. What is serfdom? Serfdom is similar to slavery, but serfs can't be really sold or bought. What serfdom was is this comes out of feudalism in Europe, and we see it in Russia too, where these are basically peasants that were tied to the land and had to work basically for the landowners. They couldn't leave their lands. They couldn't just like up and quit. They really were kind of tied to that area. If they didn't make enough, grow enough crops or do enough work to cover kind of their living expenses, usually the people that owned the land would put them further in debt and make them owe more and more land, work back to them. And it became this kind of never-ending cycle, similar to the idea of sharecropping, which happened here in the United States during the late 1800s, early 1900s, where basically no matter how much you worked, you were never going to pay off your debts, and you were always going to have to work or for a landowner. And if you didn't, then you could be put in jail or worse. So that's really what serfdom is. And certainly, obviously, the peasants, hated it, of course. And so you see uprisings in Russia due to this. That's one of the big things that kind of negatively is going to impact Russia at this time is both Peter and Catherine are going to continue to placate and give into the nobility and ignore the cries from the serfs about what all rights they can have, etc. And just to let you know, my battery's got about, it says 19 minutes, so I'm going to go about 5 more minutes, and I'm going to have to wrap this up because I didn't bring my charger from work on my new computer here, so I don't really want this thing to die on me. So if you got any last minute questions, I guess now's your time to ask. So let's see. Don't see any on there. Where were all all the Portuguese empires located? Sarcastic answer is they were located in Portugal. Portugal owned Brazil. They owned parts of Western Africa. Angola is a big place they had. A lot of the islands off the African coast. They were one of the first ones to reach India with Da Gama. And so they had trading cities or posts like the city of Zhao, G-A-O. But they, and I am funny, that was really it. Brazil is really the big piece of land that they're able to take. Gray, will we be able to do more of these for the units to come? That will depend on Mr. Buck, who will be your new teacher. I've been in contact with him, and he's getting a lot of, well, he's gotten all of my stuff for units 5 and 6. And he and I are going to, I guess, kind of work to see how the rest goes. I have no idea. I don't want to step on his toes. So it's obviously something that he'd have to sign off on as well. But I'm trying to make sure that he has as much of my stuff as possible to give to you guys. So let's see. Any last minute ones? And you guys have an extra day, so I mean, you have till Friday. So if there are any other kind of last minute things, ask me a question on Remind, on Twitter. You can email me. How long has that beard been growing? Too long, Bryce. I need to shave. I know. So yeah. So thank you guys all. I hope this was helpful. I'm glad to hear quite a few of you are appreciative of this, and I'm glad to help. And I guess I'm gonna kind of end it with that. I've got one last question. The Spanish gender structure. I think you're making up questions now. I don't know what a gender structure looks like. Male and female. And males had more power, just like on Spaces. So sorry, I can't give a better answer than that. I miss all of you guys too. I hope you guys have a good day tomorrow, and good luck on Friday with the test. And as I said, if there's anything else that I can do, you guys know you can always reach out, and I'll help you any way I can. All right, I'm gonna sign off. Take care.